Hey everybody, welcome back to the Comic Keystone. Yes, I know it's been a long time since episode 1. Trust me, I know when I did Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Netflix series, I had a great time and I've been meaning to do episode 2 and I've had ideas. I wanted to cover Dragon Ball, sort of an Akira Toriyama tribute since he had passed away, and I wanted to cover X-Men 97, which I still probably will at some point do those because I mean X-Men 97 especially was incredible and I definitely want to do that in a future episode. But episode 2, I chose something a little bit more relevant, which is Deadpool and Wolverine just came out this past weekend and I watched it. And just to give you a little bit of background information, here's some context. If you know me personally, you know that I'm the guy who is at the first showing for any superhero movie, Marvel or DC, it doesn't matter. And this past week, I was on vacation and I was in Cancun in Mexico. Now, normally this doesn't stop me. So, way back when Batman vs. Superman had come out, I was actually in Ecuador and I was on my honeymoon. And my wife and I, we drove 3 hours to go see Batman vs. Superman in Ecuador. Now, we had a little bit more information about the area. You know, we had a driver in the area who had great reviews and things like that on TripAdvisor. So we felt definitely more safe. And that was the problem in Mexico. So the movie theater that I wanted to go watch it at, the closest one was just outside of the hotel strip or the Cancun hotel area. And basically, for the entire week, I was there with my family, extended family, and everybody was just warning me, trying to keep me safe. You know, I was close. I really wanted to go. It came out on Wednesday, and I could have gone to the 1:30 p.m. show. Ultimately, though, it didn't happen. That's all right. I was sad, but it's okay. I came home on Friday, and I got home from the airport, put my kids to sleep, put them to bed at 10 o'clock, and I caught the 10:30 p.m. show. So technically, I mean, it's like the first showing, from when I'm home, right? It counts? No, I don't know. Anyways, this was just incredible, and it was exactly what I was looking for. The only problem is that I was so sleepy. I was so tired. I caught myself like closing my eyes a couple times in the movie, not because I was bored, but I was exhausted. And so I like actually missed some scenes, not much, but I just caught myself like my eyes were closing just here and there. But I did, catch up, and I'm definitely gonna watch it again because I think it definitely deserves at least being watched 2 times, if not three or more, which is what I did with Avengers Endgame. I watched it probably 5 or 6 times in theaters, so that's about 15 hours of my life that went to that movie. I'd say this one deserves like 2, if not 3 times at least. To get to Deadpool and Wolverine, I just want to go my own review of the movie itself and kind of my own expectations before I got into the movie, before I started watching. So, what I thought was this was going to be what Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to be. And I think everybody agreed on that. Doctor Strange was supposed to be about, I mean, that was the first multiverse movie where, he's traveling through the multiverse and everybody expected the cameos and everybody expected just mind-blowing appearances, and it didn't deliver in that sense. This movie does. And I also think it's because of the actors that are involved. So you have Ryan Reynolds and you have Hugh Jackman playing Deadpool and Wolverine, and just the pull they have. Probably, I feel like Ryan Reynolds just has uh, connections of his own, and he's also being there as a producer of this film, I'm sure too. And so with that, just came the pull of being able to get the actors that he wanted to be a part of the movie and the cameos. One thing I appreciated of this movie was every cameo of someone from the past, a superhero from the past, was relevant to the plot. So it wasn't just, hey, show face and be there and disappear. anything like that. It was actually because you played a part in the film. So we'll definitely get to that. Other than that, I think I, everybody had high expectations of the movie, myself included. And when I first got out of the film, because I was so sleepy, I thought it didn't deliver as much, and I started catching up over the next couple days, and just reading up on it and things like that. And I have officially given it a 9 out of 10 for my own fitter rating scale, which is absolutely irrelevant and means nothing. But to me, it's a 9 out of 10. And the reason for that is because I thought the entire plot of the movie was great. The only thing I didn't like about the plot is you have your typical villain that wants to just rule the world, or in this case, the void. And so I thought the plot was okay. Um, in that sense, I think that's what struggled, but the rest of the plot was great, and we'll dive into what that was. So to start off, I'll go through this, sequentially from beginning to end, and take you through the movie. The beginning of the movie starts off very similar to Deadpool 2, where actually Deadpool 1, where he is already dressed up as Deadpool and he's sitting off the bridge, and he kind of takes you into, well, let me show you how I got here. So in this case, he's in the middle of a forest, and he talks about Logan, the movie Logan that came out, which was the final movie of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. And he addresses, and this is the great thing about the Deadpool character, is he can break the fourth wall. So in this case, what it means is he doesn't have any limitations in terms of what he can talk about. That's the whole point of the character. He can talk about Marvel, he can talk about DC, he can talk about other movies, he can talk about characters, he can reference pretty much anything, as long as I guess they don't get sued for it, because he technically couldn't mention Spider-Man at some point, but he did the thwip thwip with his hand motion to kind of show the webs coming out. You get what I mean. So he can reference pretty much anything, and that's the great part. Is the beginning of this movie is him in the same forest where Logan died in the Logan movie, where Wolverine died there, and he is determined to go and find Wolverine because just like himself, Wolverine has regenerative healing powers. So he thinks that Wolverine is still alive, just buried underground. And he digs him up and he just finds a skeleton, but it's the adamantium skeleton, so it's all still intact. And the TVA shows up in the forest and is there to attack him, or bring him back to the TVA. And that's where the greatest opening sequence takes place. I I don't know. This is just, I could watch this on YouTube all day. It's the funniest thing. So the intro to this movie is Deadpool killing TVA soldiers to Bye 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 from NSYNC. And it's just so unique because anytime he throws, he uses Wolverine's skeleton, like every single bone in the body, and he has some funny jokes along the way about it too. He referenced 200, 207 bones because the extra bone was from his wife in Gossip Girl because she starred in Gossip Girl. So the funny thing is that he used Wolverine's bones to pretty much desecrate the TVA agents. And every time he threw it, it was the opening credits. Like someone was credited, producer, director, actors, etc., etc. So again, just super unique, and he was dancing to it along the way. And so I thought that it's just such a unique opening, such a unique intro, and I hope they make like a music video out of it in the future because I really just I could watch it all day. It was really funny, and that's when he kind of gets into, well, let me tell you how I get here. So after he kind of takes care of the TVA is when you look into, okay, this is how he got here. So it goes into, he is back in the past. It's 2000, I think 18 is when Deadpool 2 ended. And so remember from that movie, he has Cable, and Cable has the time control device. And so he uses that device to travel through time. And remember, in Deadpool 2, all his friends and family have pretty much died. So he had the X Force team, and they all died as they were coming down from the helicopter, or from the plane as they were parachuting down, all except for two of them, I believe. And then his girlfriend also ended up dying. So he went back in time and he saved them. And now what he's doing is he's trying out for the Avengers. So he went to the sacred timeline, or the Avengers timeline in this case, and he's talking with Happy, and he's trying out for the Avengers, and he's interviewing for the team. But Happy, in a nice way, rejects him, and just pretty much tells him that superheroes in this case are not trying to do things for themselves, they're doing it for other people. And he was doing it because he wanted to show his girlfriend that he's selfless and he has a greater purpose and things like that. Anyways, so moving on from there, Deadpool ultimately goes into what I compared to like Spider-Man 3 maybe, when Peter Parker no, was it Spider-Man 3 or 2? When he no, I think it's 2, when he can't use his webs anymore. Basically he stops being a superhero. And just tries to pull off the normal human, everyday life. And so that's what he does. And he gets the fake hair, he gets a job, he works at a car dealership, and there's a bunch of jokes about Honda Odysseys, even though it's probably in my future. But I think he just tries to pull off everyday life. And that's when one day the TVA shows up at his door when he's having his birthday party and everybody's surprising him. His family and his friends are there. Not family, but his ex-girlfriend at this point, and his friends are all there celebrating him. And the TVA shows up and they bring him in. And here is when he kind of gets introduced to the TVA. So the TVA, for those of you that don't know, you kind of had to watch Loki. Maybe they explained it a little bit, but you had to watch Loki to really get a good understanding of what the TVA is and the journey they've been on. The TVA stands for the Time Variance Authority, and their original purpose was anytime that there is a change in the timeline. So, for example, the change from Loki was supposed to, go on to be in Infinity War and Endgame, and sorry, not Endgame, but technically just in Infinity War where he died to Thanos. And in Endgame, what happened was he caught uh, the Tesseract and changed his fate because of that, because the Avengers went back in time and he ended up getting his hands on the Tesseract and he traveled through space and time. And so he changed his fate. And that means he became a variant. And so the Time Variance Authority does exactly that. They go and they get rid of variants, meaning clones, copies, just people that have drifted off from their original purpose, what they were supposed to fulfill. So that's what Loki is about. Ultimately, in the end, after season 1 and season 2, the TVA has a new purpose, and they don't prevent these, multiversal timelines and variants anymore from occurring, but they have a new specific purpose, and that's pertaining to Loki itself. So the reason that Deadpool was brought to the TVA is basically what he thinks. He is Marvel Jesus. And that's just him, making a play on Iron Man's quote from Endgame when he says, "I am Iron Man." But in this case, it's "I am Marvel Jesus." And he goes on and he's seeing the video screen, and it has a lot of different things on there. It has Captain America showing up, and you can see Deadpool recognizing these characters, even though he's never actually seen them in the past. He's never been a part of their movies or anything like that, but he's Deadpool. That character recognizes everything. And so because of that, he salutes Captain America, and he recognizes Thor, and Thor is actually in front of him, and he's holding his body in what seems like it's in the future. He's holding Deadpool, and it's like a remake of Thor: The Dark World when he's holding Loki's body on the floor. And so he kind of asked about that, but They quickly brush it over as something that's in the distant future. What is this about? I have no clue. Could this be something that happens in Secret Wars in the future, the Avengers 6 movie that's going to come out in the future? No idea. Or is it just something that, it's just a throwaway, just something that might have happened to a different variant or something like that? Not really sure. So that happened, and then ultimately it leads to him trying to figure out, why am I here? And so Paradox is this guy at the TVA, and he's basically someone who is overseeing like a black ops team of the TVA. They're underground, nobody really knows about that team specifically, and Paradox runs the team. And he talks about anchor beings. And so he describes that an anchor being is a single being in every universe whom, if they die, that universe slowly dies. And so, from the Deadpool universe, from his original movies, the anchor being was Logan. And so, in uh, it's kind of showing that Logan and the X-Men is a part of the Deadpool universe. It maybe doesn't make complete sense, but that's the route that they went with. And so when Wolverine dies in the Logan movie, that's saying that the anchor being has died and his universe is slowly going to die. And that means his, ex-girlfriend, his friends, everybody is going to die. And so Deadpool, his whole mission is, well, I need to save not really my universe, but my his universe is his friends, the people that are closest to him. So he's not even trying to save other people. It's not like he's trying to save his world or anything like that. It's just the people that he enjoys being around, the people that he loves specifically, that's his universe. And so he wants to save them. And what does he have to do? He figures, well, what I can do is I can find a Wolverine to replace the one that died in my universe as the anchor being. And that's the gist of the beginning part. Is he escapes the TVA and he's trying to find Wolverine, so he goes to Logan, the one that's buried from the Logan universe or from that same universe, and finds that he can't because he's actually dead and the skeleton is still intact. The NSYNC music montage plays and he kills the TVA. And then he goes on to pretty much find all the different variants of Wolverine because he's trying to find someone that can replace his own as the anchor being. This is where it's awesome. So he goes through a bunch of different universes and he will try to find that Wolverine. And so he goes through some of the ones that I can remember would be the short Wolverine. So in the comics, Wolverine is actually, I think, 5'3", but Hugh Jackman was cast and he was like 6'4", something like that, or 6'2". And so obviously there's a big height difference in what the character was supposed to be and what it's actually portrayed as in live action. And so in this case, they just made a play on that where they made Hugh Jackman really short. So that was one of the variants of Wolverine. Then you see one of them is the Omega Wolverine, and that is when he basically becomes like the actual like Weapon X. So in this universe, Apocalypse has actually taken over, and that's just one of the variants. I don't want to go into too many details. The other one is the Patch Wolverine, so that's just another variant that's sitting there. I know a lot of people thought this might be Daniel Radcliffe, like Harry from Harry Potter, because that was a big rumor beforehand when we saw him in the trailer and in sneak peeks of this particular variant. All you see is from his back and his hair is spiked up from the sides, and it looks like a different person, like a different actor. So a lot of people thought this was going to be Daniel Radcliffe. And I think that's because some of the recent roles that he's played, he's gotten really jacked and stuff. And so they just thought he was going to play that role, but it was still the same Hugh Jackman playing that role. Another one was he was on a cross, he was crucified. So that was a different comic where Logan was crucified on a cross. And the really cool one was where he's wearing the brown outfit actually. So it's not the traditional like yellow outfit, but in this specific comic he's wearing this brown outfit, and it's called Wolverine and the Hulk. And so in that comic is when he fights the Hulk, and in this case he lets the claws come out, and it actually remakes the same cover of that comic. So in that comic, the cover is the claws come out and Hulk, his image is like in the claws. So the same thing happens here. And the funny thing is, I recognize it right away that when Deadpool is talking to Hulk, the first thing he says to him is, "I am Marvel Jesus, you dull creature," and that's when Hulk just kind of like knocks him away. And it threw me back to the first Avengers movie, which is when Loki is in Stark Tower and he is pretty much getting beat up by everybody, and Hulk is in front of him, and he says to him, "I am a god, you dull creature." So it's a quick throwback to what Loki had said. Again, Deadpool is just able to reference anything and everything. So that's where this came from. The best cameo of this Wolverine variant journey was the Cavillrine. So if you didn't recognize him, or if you don't know who it is, Henry Cavill played Superman in the DC universe for Zack Snyder, and he was there in Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Justice League, and the Snyder Cut as well. And so he actually appears in this as one of the variants of Wolverine. And Deadpool has a really funny conversation with him. He tells him, like, we're going to treat you so much better than those people down the street. So again, he's able to reference DC and how he's treated. What does that mean? It means that Henry Cavill's journey pretty much, it was just disrespected. He, along with the other, superheroes, their movies were halted. They just came to a halt, and Black Adam came out eventually with The Rock, with Dwayne Johnson. And The Rock was promising something incredible that was going to happen. And in the end of the post-credits scene, Henry Cavill came back as Superman. And everybody was just, look, this is the best. This is exactly what this universe needs. And then it meant nothing, because they got new leadership, again with James Gunn this time, and James Gunn said, "Yeah, we're not using Henry Cavill as our Superman, so we're going in a different direction." And that was a problem with DC, was they just kept changing leadership and decisions, and Henry Cavill, who played Superman, just never got back to that opportunity to play Superman, which he was great at. And so in this case, he plays one of the variants of Wolverine. Another thing later on, I know we have Wolverine variants, but we also have Deadpool variants. We can get into that a little bit later, though, because that happens like much later in the film. Finally, we get to the actual variant that we're looking for, which is the one that he pulls into the TVA. So he finds him, just like from the trailer, he finds Logan in the bar, and he starts to talk to him, and you can see that this Wolverine, he's in plain clothes, but his claws are coming out really slowly. There's some jokes to that, and ultimately he just gets knocked out because he's drunk, like beyond drunk. And he takes him back to the TVA, and he thinks that this is the variant, the Wolverine, that's going to take over as his anchor being. And Paradox quickly tells him this is the worst Wolverine that you could have chosen, because this is the one that let his universe down. And it's not completely clear as to what happened. So later on in the movie, we learn from this Wolverine that the humans came to the mutants, and they somehow exterminated, they somehow killed all of the mutants. So some sort of genocide in this case took place of the mutants, and he seemingly is the only one left, because he wasn't there. I think he might have been off like getting drunk or something, and he just wasn't there to protect them or to save them and be with them. And he references how Deadpool sees his costume underneath the plain clothes, and so he thinks like, yeah, this has to be the guy. Like, he's finally wearing the yellow and blue, but the reason he's actually wearing it is more of a tribute, because he let everybody down. And he says, Scott and Jean and Beast, I think he might have mentioned Rogue, they were always telling him to wear his to put his costume on, for him to wear his costume, but he never did, because he just That was his attitude. Like he didn't really want them to think that he wanted to be there. And even though you can tell, like because he let all of them down because they all died, this really ate at him. It was really tough for him, and so we quickly figure out that this Wolverine is not going to be the one to be able to replace him. The anchor being. Then they get pruned. Pruned is basically the word for they get hit with that stick and sent to this place called the Void. And the Void is again another place that's referenced from the Loki TV series. So the Void is where variants end up going. And so in this case, he's in the Void. Both of them are, and they have no idea how to get out. Now, what we know about the Void is there's a monster there called Eliath, and Eliath basically is there to kill variants. Like he eats them, and he's kind of like the monster that takes care of the variants in the Void. And so we find out later that you either are food for Eliath or you are working for Cassandra Nova. So who is Cassandra Nova? She gets introduced as a villain in this movie, and she is basically the twin sister of Charles Xavier. And she gets into the Void. She gets pruned and she's taken to the Void. And her powers are very similar, but she has to use physical touch to be able to, enter the mind of other people. Unlike Charles, who can do it, just telepathically. And so people that are in the Void, mutants and just other people with powers, are either working for her or they're the resistance against her. And quickly we figure out that Deadpool and Wolverine, it's the classic combo. They just don't get along. You have an amazing fight scene between them at the beginning. And this is the one where the 20th Century Fox logo is in the background. The Void has a lot of references. So you'll see the Fantastic Four car. You'll see the car from the villain or the Red Skull from Captain America 1. You'll see Moon Knight's ice cream truck. You'll see a lot of different things. And one of them is a 20th Century Fox logo. And it has the X sticking out just only at the bottom for X-Men probably, or, for the X universe. Basically symbolizing that it's been pruned, that it's gone, and it's going to be, just destroyed here on out because Disney has bought Fox. And so they have a fight, Deadpool and Wolverine. And again, remember, these are two beings who have regenerative skills, so they can hurt each other as much as they want, and they just will not die. And the fight is really cool. Wolverine does his really awesome crawling scene where he's kind of like actually running like an animal at Deadpool. And just I really appreciated the cinematography of the movie. I thought it was just really well put together. The song choices were great, and this fight in particular was really cool. It quickly gets broken up by someone who's standing atop of this tower, and he's a hooded figure, and Deadpool looks to him and he just somehow knows who he is, kind of. So sees his figure, the figure gets unhooded, and it's Chris Evans who plays Captain America. And so he does this really awesome superhero landing, which is a throwback to I think in Deadpool 2 when one of the characters did that superhero landing, and it was actually a character who got fired by Disney later on. But anyways, he did this really awesome superhero landing, and then slowly but surely, the henchmen of Cassandra Nova show up, and they are one of them is Toad. So from the original X-Men movie, it's the same actor who plays him. Sorry, actually, in this case, it's Pyro. The first one to show up is Pyro. So Pyro is from X2, I believe. I don't think he was in X1, but he was in X2, and maybe X3 as well. Yeah, he was. And he's originally on the X-Men, and he later joins Magneto's, forces or the Brotherhood. And he is someone who can manipulate fire. So that's his superpower. and you have this really awesome and really funny sequence where Deadpool thinks that Captain America is here and he's here to save the day, and he's gonna have this really awesome, phrase where every superhero is just gonna come out of nowhere, and he's like, Wolverine, like, look, check this out, like, he's gonna say it, he's gonna say it. And then the really awesome part where it's building up and everybody really thinks that it is Captain America, and then he says, flame on, and it's actually the Human Torch from Fantastic Four. And even though that happened, like, even though it wasn't Captain America and he said flame on, like, it was just an awesome sequence. He, flies into the air, he lights on fire, he throws fire at Pyro, but again, Pyro's ability is he can manipulate fire. So he absorbs all of that fire, and Chris Evans basically falls to the ground and is defeated. This is kind of like a throwback to the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness cameos, where you have the Illuminati and they're up against Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, and all of them just basically, the Illuminati is like this all powerful like league that's been protecting the universe and yada yada yada, and then they go up against the Scarlet Witch and bam, like all of them just get destroyed in a matter of seconds. And that's kind of what happened here, but luckily he didn't die at this point, so that was still entertaining. Again, like if he did, I would have said like that was just a cameo service, but he came back to play a little bit more of a role. So he gets defeated, he being the Human Torch, and then they capture Deadpool and Wolverine, and they're going to take them to Cassandra Nova. And they go to Cassandra. Along the way is when Chris Evans or the Human Torch informs them of, this like resistance, or there's like a force that's out there against Cassandra, and that's who we kind of meet a little bit later on. So instead of going through like the entire plot, I'm going to cut through and just kind of talk about some of the really awesome things that I want to, which is those resistance members. So later on, after they meet Cassandra Nova and they go through this conversation, and other stuff happens, they they basically get kidnapped, and they show up in this lair, and it's in the void as well. And the first one to show up is someone with like these steak knives, or I forgot what you call them, but these like knives and katanas. No, they're not katanas. But she pretty much like she outdoes Deadpool and gets him to the ground. And the camera goes up, and this really awesome music starts playing, and it's Elektra. So Elektra is from the original Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, and she was in that movie, I believe, near the end, but she also had her own movie, her own Elektra movie too, but it's just kind of something that's forgotten. It never really went on to do anything else. So Elektra shows up as one of as one of the Resistance members, and then right after that is probably the coolest moment of the entire movie, which is when Blade shows up. So the music, again, it's just perfect for his entrance. I think it's like I remember it's like a lion roaring. And that's when Blade walks in. He does this really awesome entrance. He has a funny interaction with Ryan Reynolds because in real life, Ryan Reynolds was in one of the Blade movies. I think he was in the third Blade movie. And they didn't get along on set. Like, that was public, that they did not get along and they didn't like each other because Wesley Snipes didn't like Ryan Reynolds's, just snarky like attitude and behavior. And so they kind of play off of that a little bit. But again, like, this is who he is, right? They were able to put their differences aside, and he got the original Blade to come back to play that character in this movie. And again, like, it's fan service, but he plays a role in the plot. Like, he's there for a reason. And then after this is another great cameo, which was Gambit. So Channing Tatum shows up in this sick Gambit costume, which is, it's exactly how he looks in X-Men 97, except for the eyes, but that's okay. And this is like the ultimate fan service, but it's like his own personal little movie because he never got his own. So Channing Tatum was supposed to play Gambit a long time ago, and it never panned out. It was stuck in developmental, just not able to move forward, words that I can't use and don't want to say. but it never moved forward, and he never got the chance to play it. And he said that it really affected him, like mentally, because he was so invested in that character to begin with. And this is his chance. So he shows up, and everybody in my theater went nuts. Like I recognized it right away, and I was like, no way. And he quickly does the some card tricks, and you can tell who it is right away. So Channing Tatum is also there as Gambit. Again, these were the three that show up right away, and it was just incredible. And a little while later is when we see the fourth member, who is X-23, and it's the girl from Laura. It's the girl from Logan, and so the girl that he was basically protecting, because technically it's his daughter, Wolverine. It's his daughter, and so in his film, and so she shows up, and she's much older now, obviously, played by this same actress. This many years later, and that's when they kind of just start talking a little bit and plotting against Cassandra Nova. The thing that brings them all together is Deadpool kind of references like how these guys are all just forgotten characters, right? They were in their own movies, or even not in Gambit's case, and they were able to come together in the Void, and they serve this purpose of going up against the Cassandra Nova and her forces, who are trying to rule the Void. And so they journey together. They go to Cassandra Nova, and again, another battle takes place, which is a really awesome battle between the mutants. And there's a lot of cameos here too. You see, one of them is Azazel, the red teleportation powered, sort of looks like a devil, and he was in X-Men First Class, and he was with Shaw at the beginning of the movie and throughout the movie, and so he's there, and Juggernaut is there, who's from X3, The Last Stand, and he's also from Deadpool, but I think this one is supposed to look a little bit more like the X-Men Last Stand one, but it's not played by the same actor though. And you see a lot of more cameos here. You see Toad from the original X-Men movie. You see Psylocke from X-Men Apocalypse, and a ton others. So it's really great fan service, and they do this really awesome battle against the Resistance, which is the four characters that I mentioned, and Deadpool and Wolverine. So they have this awesome battle, and you see Blade, you see Gambit finally going into the fight and using their powers. Elektra, same thing, and so X-23 as well. So it's done really well, and ultimately they get to Cassandra Nova. Their plot, or their plan, is to use the helmet from Gambit. Sorry, not Gambit. The helmet from Juggernaut to do the same thing as in the comics, which is that it plays like a similar role as Magneto's helmet. So they already referenced that a number of heroes went up against Cassandra Nova and they all died. So Magneto died, Punisher died, and a few others as well. I think Daredevil died, and they had this funny joke of Jennifer Gardner, who in real life was married to Ben Affleck, who played Daredevil when they were filming that movie. And they said, oh, and, Deadpool looks at her and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry that Daredevil died," and she said, "It's fine." you know. So a lot of heroes had died going against Cassandra Nova. It's not something we see, but something we're aware of, similar to Kang, I guess, in a way, where he also references in Ant-Man that he's killed a lot of Avengers, along the way. Some that we don't really see exactly. And in this case, she has access to, she talks about how a sorcerer came at one point in time, and that is Doctor Strange, and he had I think they call it a sling ring. I can't remember what it's called, sling ring, which opens a portal, and so she opens this portal, and they jump through, and they land back into the Deadpool universe, and it's actually back at his dealership. So, the rest of the movie is basically them trying to save the universe, right? So they get back to the Void, and they're able to. Cassandra Nova figures out about this this machine that Paradox, the guy from the TVA, this machine that Paradox has created, which is going to speed up the killing of the universe. So instead of the universe slowly dying, this machine is basically going to just speed that process up. And Cassandra Nova is able to manipulate that machine, and she uses it for herself because her goal is, I want to basically take over the void and be the all powerful being. And so uh, what we see along the way here, and I mentioned this before, I said we were going to talk about it a little bit later, which is the Deadpool variants. So before they get back, you see the Deadpool variants. You see Lady Deadpool, you see Cowboy Pool, you see Kid Pool, you see so many others. I think it's mentioned that there's 100 of them at least. And they come in and they basically start a war with Deadpool and Wolverine. And they, again, have this like awesome fight sequence. The thing to note about this scene particularly was the mask. And so Wolverine and Deadpool have this like awesome walkout, and they're about to go into this battle against them, against the Deadpool variants, and he just kind of reaches over his shoulder and pulls it over his head, and finally, the mask is there. The Wolverine mask comes out, and it looks perfect. It is actually perfect. And he puts it on, and he goes into battle, and he has these really awesome moves throughout the battle as well. And they fight the Deadpool core, is what they call it, or the Deadpool variants. And in the end, Peter is one of the variants who comes out, and they basically say that Peter was his friend from the beginning of the movie and from the original Deadpool 2 movie, and he's one of the X-Force members that survived. Remember I said only 2 of them really survived, and one of them was Peter. And so Peter apparently is the friend of every single Deadpool, and he shows up in a Deadpool costume, and he's got his belly hanging out and stuff, and you quickly tell that it's not Ryan Reynolds probably, and it's Peter, and everybody just goes crazy over Peter. So in that time, they just kind of sneak out as that's happening. Yeah, and then in the end is when they get the opportunity to, get back to the TVA, and they have to save their universe because they have to balance out this antimatter and matter machine that Paradox has built. And so Cassandra Nova is activating it and trying to use it to speed up the killing and to bring everything to the void. And what they are doing is they have to balance that out. So Deadpool makes this selfless, sacrifice where he wants to do it himself and he doesn't want his buddy to die and he thinks that he can take care of it. So he locks out Wolverine. And this is kind of a throwback to, the original conversation he had with Happy Hogan, which is, people do superheroes, they do stuff for other people, not for themselves, right? So he's trying to save Wolverine, his buddy in this case. And so he locks him out. But in the end, Wolverine is able to come in because Deadpool was not able to do it himself. So he was trying to break down this metal door the entire time. He breaks it down just in the nick of time. He grabs a hold of Deadpool's hand, and he also gets his claws into the other side of that machine, and his costume quickly rips off, and you see his ridiculously jacked body. And it's funny because Deadpool earlier in the movie said, yeah, he's probably wearing this costume because he's let himself go ever since he got his divorce. And so in real life, Hugh Jackman was divorced, but the play was, he's just covering all of it up because he let himself go, when in reality he is freakishly jacked, and that's what you see in the scene. And together they're able to absorb the antimatter and matter from both sides. And remember, they have regenerative healing powers, and so because they're able to do it together, they're able to regenerate together, and that healing is basically balanced out with what should have wiped them out. Paradox shows up and he thinks that they're dead, and they end up surviving. And they walk out in this really awesome, you know, superhero like crazy music and awesome walkout. And Paradox is pissed off, and Hunter B-15 shows up. So this is a character from the Loki series, and she's played a pretty big role in the series, and now she is like the lead of the TVA, and she is just finding out about Paradox and his, Black Ops team, and she is shutting it down. She has some conversations with Deadpool, and she goes into about, or he asked her, for some favors, basically, and she said she'll do her best. But that's the end of the film, and near the end is when they get some shawarma together. So that's their throwback to the original Avengers movie, which is when the Avengers team, after they've done the Battle of New York, they go out and get shawarma together. And I think it's funny because everybody online will say, like, even in the movie actually, they say the Avengers discovered shawarma because no one else knew about shawarma until that happened. It's funny because of my, like, you know ethnicity and the food that I'm used to eating and the area that I live in and things like that. I mean, obviously, like, shawarma is something that I and we are used to, and to people out there, it's like shawarma was discovered by the Avengers, and that's what Deadpool is saying too. So they go out and they have shawarma together. That is Deadpool and Wolverine. Again, I had a blast watching this movie. I definitely have to watch it at least one more time, but I wanted to get this episode out just to kind of review it together while it's fresh. Just kind of discuss some things that I really enjoyed, that I was critical of. Again, I've already talked about how the plot of the film, I think overall it was great, but just that aspect of, I'm the villain. The one thing I appreciated of Thanos, and I think everybody did, was he had motivation. It wasn't just I'm trying to rule the universe. It was the universe's resources are finite, and the people, are not able to use all those resources. And so in this case, it was just Cassandra Nova who was trying to rule the void and just be the leader of people. So, in that sense, it's whatever. But the cameos were great. They actually play, a role in the plot. The overall plot is great. I think, with the reason why he has to go get Wolverine and what he's trying to accomplish, with the anchor being and everything like that. So again, I really enjoyed those pieces. And the Deadpool and Wolverine fights were awesome. They had another fight scene in this vehicle in the forest, and again, like, every fight scene I think that played out, the cinematography of those scenes was really great, and they were different, especially the beginning. Like, I love the intro. The intro is awesome. With that, let me know what you think. I have that form that you can fill out, and it'll be a part of, the description of these different, wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast. Even on the YouTube link, I post a video whenever I can, and it'll be in the description there as well. So fill out the form, leave comments if you can, depending on which platform you're on, because I'd love to hear your thoughts or read your thoughts and just have some conversations. And if you haven't, and this was like just you listening to it because you wanted to know about it, go out and watch it. This was the best MCU film since Avengers Endgame. And I feel like that's not saying a lot, but at the same time, like, there's been like 10 movies since then. So it's definitely up there as a great movie, and it brings back the OG characters of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. I hope they come back in the future, in the coming Avengers films that were just announced recently, with Doomsday and Secret Wars. I hope they make their return along with other characters, and that they get utilized in the same way, where it's not just cameos just for fun, but they're actually a part of the plot. I hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you much sooner for episode 3. All right, thanks. See you guys.